Yeah. Okay. All right. Here we are. Here we are. Yes. Happy Sunday, folks. It's actually Sunday. Every day is Sunday. Today is especially Sunday. Here we go in, into the internet. Sorry. I'm going to ask, at least right now, and maybe one or two other times, for your patience as I learn how to navigate this new way of doing things. I am not too skilled at it. I'm going to attempt to share a screen. Testing audio. We are testing audio, folks. Testing audio. Excellent. All right. Here we go with episode 2. I'm going to share the screen. Chef, where's the screen? Window, entire screen, Brave tab. No, window.
Yeah, window. That one, top right.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, now how do I go back to...
Arrow keys. Yeah, that works.
How do I go back to seeing the guy?
Back to Brave.
Okay. Again, thank you. Here we go, folks. Welcome to our live series, episode 2. Let us do our best to put on the magical hat. I will preface by saying, there's magical bad news and there's magical good news. And we touched this yesterday in yesterday's Daily Dharma. And it was still fresh in my mind. I was chewing on it, and it's kind of fun. So I think we should touch it as a way to get into, as a way to lead off. These first probably 10 to 12 lectures are designed to go in order. So I would encourage anyone who's listening in for the first time to just think about that this is going to build off of a previous idea, and etc. They will build on each other. And I will try my best to find a surfboard to catch this wave into this being somewhat entertaining. And so here we go with the magical hat. The magical good news and bad news. Let's do the magical bad news first. From a Dharma point of view, from a Buddhist point of view, from a wisdom point of view, from a compassionist point of view, from a life point of view, from a reality point of view, from a magical point of view, here's the bad news. There's nowhere else to go except everywhere. There's nothing else to do except everything, and there's no one else to be except everyone. In other words, we can't get out of the game. We cannot escape. There's no escape. And I was referencing this movie that I used to watch. I don't even remember anything. I literally remember zero about the movie except that Ray Liotta was in it. And I think they were in Australia. That's as best as I remember of the context. But I think the theme was that he was trying to escape this island. Okay. So, and I was making the joke that when we reside in basic insanity, which is a concept we've talked about on many of our podcasts, it's highlighted in the Down to Earth Dharma series that is more produced. When we reside in basic insanity, in other words, when we do not know experientially, viscerally who we are, why we're here, where we've come from, and where we're going, it feels as if it's us against this island of lunatic barbarians. It's me against the world, and I got to get out of here. Get me away from the right wing crazies. Get me away from the left wing crazies. Get me away from the Trump supporters. Get me away from the Biden supporters. I got to get out of here. I'm surrounded by idiots. My boss is an idiot. My coworkers don't care. Or if you're the boss, none of my staff actually cares. Gen Z doesn't want to work hard. All of that, right? All of that, right? And unfortunately, the bad news, the magical bad news is there's nowhere else to go except everywhere. There's nothing else to do except everything. And there's no one else to be except everyone. In other words, we have to solve the game. We cannot, the way to relieve ourselves of the pressure of feeling that it is us against, an island, a globe full of barbarian lunatics, is to solve the game. There's nowhere else to go. We have to solve the game. Now, the magical good news is that the game can be solved, right? The magical good news is I referenced one of my favorite musicians, Van Hunt. I'm the captain of this relationship. My mind and my body is a ship, a relational ship that I'm driving around. I can drive my mind ship and my body ship in such a way as to earn more and more sovereignty, experience more and more purpose and meaning. Okay, that's the idea. And I also made the joke about the meme, the I match vibes, so you decide how we're going to act, which is the most ridiculous thing to actually think about and want to do. So what you're saying is, since I match vibes, so you decide how we're going to act. In other words, so what you're saying is you want other people to dictate how you feel all day long for your entire life. Is that what you want? No, of course that's not what you want. And actually, it's not true, right? The truth is that I'm the captain of this relationship. And yes, we match vibes. And therefore, I decide how we're going to act. Yes, we match vibes, but I'm the captain of this relationship. And therefore, I decide how we're going to act. Okay. And the last little magical hat game is, the solution, unfortunately, is to become so intimate with other people that we naturally become invested in their well-being as much as we do our own. That is the way to solve the game. It can be solved. And then when we do solve it, what happens is we realize that there were never any barbarians there to begin with, that they were just a fiction of our imagination. They were the result of our basic insanity. When we heal our basic insanity, or in other words, when we initiate or excavate and resurrect, we use these language from an esoteric Christian point of view, when we resurrect the indwelling Christ, we realize that we were never surrounded by anyone other than integral parts of ourselves, right? And therefore, the war that we were experiencing is immediately reconciled, right? In other words, like, notice that you are not at war with your elbow, right? Because you feel that your elbow is an integral part of yourself. And the mechanics of that is that I do not feel threatened by my elbow or my toe, etc. Okay, folks, let's get into, we've shortened here, the three aspects, the three principal aspects. I'm going to, no, well, I need to probably do this.
Keep it on there.
Okay, how do I move the slide, Chef?
Like that.
All right.
Mhm.
Yes.
There we go.
Okay. But no, I need to be able to see the screen too. Sorry. Okay. Familiarization. Why the hell are we starting here? So we have an idea called meditation. And it's actually not helpful. From a Dharma point of view, it's not helpful. And that's why the Tibetans, as recipients of the entire canon of the Buddhist world, decided to change the word to a word that meant familiarization. So I'm stopping right here again to throw down the philosophical gauntlet. The way to evolve ourselves is to become familiar with the principles that are around us, inside of us and around us. So in other words, when you think of meditation, a more accurate way to understand what a professional student is trying to do is become familiar with what the hell is going on. It's the whole attempt of everything. Again, like I said, the way to solve the game is to become so familiar to the point of intimacy, right? So we're the whole point of all of this is to try to familiarize ourselves with what the hell is going on. Okay. Here we go, folks. So again, this lecture is is building on the first concept. So let's say that I had, for some reason, I became a crazy person that wanted to study Dharma and like actually see if it's real or not, right? I would have to, in the same way that if I wanted to become a world-class chef, I would need someone to teach me what the hell is start to finish, right? And so then if I were a professional student, some crazy person, I want to study Dharma, well, the first thing that I would be invited to do is familiarize myself with the Dharma Compass, right? Familiarize myself with, my composition as a being, familiarize myself with the various places I can take myself, right? And the cause and effect associated with going from one place to another place, okay? So familiarization with the Dharma Compass, right? And then notice that there's a place on the Dharma Compass called dissipation and sustainability. We talked about we don't want to reside in a place where we're constantly feeling drained. We want to reside in a place where we see 100% return on our investment, right? And then notice that our instinct is to, when we think about what it was like for us to be in dissipation, we land on the byproduct or the effect. I was in a crazy relationship. I didn't manage my money. I was an alcoholic, etc. Right? And we're not thinking about we have a distaste of the memory at the level of the effect, right? And we're instead of at the level of cause, right? Again, the Dharma Compass is saying that the zone of dissipation emerges out of performance, which emerges out of mentation, which emerges out of view. So if I want to feel shame about something, shame as a way to try to prevent myself from engaging in certain things, right? I have authentic shame about being a certain way, and I remember that, and like I try to hold that so that it prevents me from doing that. I should actually be more ashamed of the thought process and even more ashamed of the way that I was viewing myself and other people. Like it should land there as opposed to the performance, which was a byproduct of the mindset and the worldview. Okay, that's this is just me reviewing a little bit, trying to set us up for something. Okay, so getting mad at the wrong thing. No, we should actually focus on the cause. We should feel ashamed of having resided in or allowed the cause, right? Not the effect, right? Okay, so a couple things to familiarize ourselves here before we move forward. Familiarize, memorize, if that's a way to help become familiar. So this is a basic cause and effect concept. I mean, if we were to, when we integrate these ideas, it literally prevents the majority of the things that had been problems. Okay, so the zone of dissipation does not inherently or eternally exist. It only comes into existence temporarily as a result of specific actions of body and mind. It is something that is created through actions of body and mind. The zone of sustainability, likewise, does not inherently or eternally exist. It only comes into existence temporarily, again, as a result of specific types of actions of body and mind. Invitation to familiarize, okay, right? Again, invitation to familiarize. When we know what types of actions cause or create dissipation, we're free to avoid it. When we know what creates dissipation, we're actually free to avoid that forever, period. When we know what creates sustainability, we're free to reside in it. When we know what we need to do in order to create and reside in the zone of sustainability. We are free to live there forever, period. Okay. Moving on. Invitation to familiarize. If the actions of body and mind that create dissipation are absent, dissipation cannot exist. If the actions of mind and body that create dissipation are absent, dissipation cannot exist. Invitation to familiarize. Similarly, if the actions of mind and body that create sustainability are absent, sustainability cannot exist. Invitation to familiarize. I'm going to try to drive fairly quickly so we can get to questions and maybe some spontaneous discussion or insight. All right. All right, here we go with the theme of today, the three principal aspects. Invitation to familiarize. If we're going to tread the path, if we're going to have any shot of residing in sustainability, we need a map. The Dharma Compass is a map. So the three principal aspects that are landmarks, that's how you can know that you are located somewhere, as well as practical instructions, right? You know, go to the tree and then turn right. When you run into the mountain, you're going to turn left and then you'll see the lake, something like that, right? Three principal aspects. Invitation to familiarize are instructions, in other words. Okay. And so they are purported to have been teachings from a hero named Atisha. And anyone who's encountered Atisha knows that he has something. He's famous for something called a lamp that outlines the path, stages of the path. Atisha's lamp. And in the lamp, he says, I, the yogi, have practiced just that. You who also seek liberation, please cultivate yourself in the same way. And he says that every single step, right? I, the baker, just completed a cake. You who also wish to bake the cake, please do the recipe. Please follow the recipe. I, the baker, have just completed yet another cake. You who also wish to be whomever you wish to be at home, please follow the recipe. In other words, familiarization right now from the top. Is there a relationship between getting a cake and following a recipe? Probably. Also, hello out there, internet. Feel free at any time to say hello in the chat. Is there a relationship between eating a cake and using a recipe? Probably. Okay. Yes. Yes. Okay. Let's move on. Atisha, lamp. And so these are, so again, it is the three principal aspects are ascribed primarily to Atisha, and then they're incorporated by other of the heroes in the line. We're going to, so now, trigger warning. We forgot to put the trigger warning slide in. Maybe we can introduce that also. Trigger warning, heads up. I'm about to say something, and I'm asking you to be patient with me, and I'm also asking you to please not cancel me. Please don't cancel me from what I'm about to say. But the magical bad news is that what Atisha says, the baker who had the cake, Atisha says that if you don't do these things, you're not actually baking. Right. And again, I'm going to make this common sense, but I want to give a heads up. I also want to give a heads up as an invite, as a familiarization invite, magical hat, good news, domain, that what if it's possible that the Dharma Compass, that if we are equipped with the Dharma Compass and the three principal aspects, that we can literally experience what it's like. I am the captain of this relationship. I go where I want. In other words, I want to pause really quickly and just say, again, we are bombarded with information. We're bombarded with information. We literally do not have time to stop and evaluate the quality because we are constantly bombarded. So we have to put a wall up, right? Or every now and then we'll look for something, but we really get just some surface answer, right? So magical hat, good news, familiarization, invitation, domain. I'm trying to place us somewhere. This is extremely profound, in other words, extremely profound, extremely potent, extremely profound ideas. Extremely potent, extremely profound ideas. Let's get into a little common sense here. That's right. So I used an analogy, the three principal aspects. What do you mean the three principal? I can't do, you mean I can't do what I want? I can't create my own spiritual, whatever. I can't pick and choose. I have to do what Atisha says or whatever, right? It's like, well, think about the common sense of the idea of the three principal aspects as something that composes or comprises, makes up our practice, right? It's like think about the three principal aspects of your shoe. What are the three principal aspects of your shoe? The sole, the laces, and whatever the material, the leather, let's say, okay? Let's say let's say we had a great sales month and I could go and afford to buy some Allen Edmonds, lace up boots or something, right? I'm going to get a really nice pair of leather shoes. Well, what if there were no laces or sole or leather there, right? Where would the shoe be? Right? And then think about your hand, is what I'm saying, no skin, no bone, no muscle. What do you mean hand? What do you mean hand? Point to your hand. I'm inviting you right now to point to your hand. Point to your hand, right? You mean skin? What are you pointing to? Skin? No, deeper than that. Oh, the bone? No, deeper. The blood vessels? No, deeper. The cells? No, deeper. The nucleus of the cell? Et cetera, right? In other words, the only reason that you think a hand is there is because it has all these different components, right? And when all the micro components is like, I don't have time to say ATP, mitochondria, blah, 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 and, right? And so I just say hand. But also, if I want to start to describe the hand generally, I can say, well, skin, bone, muscle, right? In other words, if there's no skin, no bone, no muscle, there's no hand there. If there's no three principal aspects of the hand, there's no hand there. If there are no three principal aspects of our study and practice, there is no study and practice. Okay? So trigger warning, but I'm trying to make it, fun, but also provocative, but also just think about the three principal aspects of your cake. It was probably the ingredients, the equipment, and the recipe, right? If you have no ingredients, no equipment, and no recipe, how the hell are you going to get a cake? Okay, common sense, duh, right? Familiarization with common sense. That's all the Dharma is. Okay, so let's get into now the traditional definition of the three principal aspects. We're going to start with this. The first is called renunciation. Again, I'm going to invite, for these first few that are a little bit more information heavy, I want to invite you to familiarize yourself. Invitation to familiarize. Why? Because the more familiar we become with something, the more intimate we become with something. Invitation to familiarize with the three principal aspects from a traditional point of view. The first is called renunciation. You'll also encounter this, in translations as the determination to be free from samsara. So renunciation is also referred to as the determination to be free. You could see it like that. Or you could see it as the determination to be free from samsara. Now, samsara, is something that is getting a little bit lost in telephone game. So I also invite you to just look at, ask AI to give you the etymology of samsara, and you'll see where it comes from, how, the compound, how it has been compounded. You will see what it means, in its parts. And so we can loosely understand it as wandering, or what the hell does that mean? It means spiritual homelessness. That's what it means. I don't feel like I belong here. Get me the hell off this island. Get me the hell off of this island globe that's full of lunatic barbarians. Get me out of here. That's the feeling associated with spiritual homelessness. That is not renunciation. Renunciation does not mean I want to leave my body or the world. Renunciation specifically means we're making a determination to put an end to our spiritual homelessness. That's what it means. We're making a determination to investigate why we feel that we are spiritually homelessness. Why do I feel like I don't belong here? I want to renounce my sense of not belonging. In other words, and I will break it down a little bit more as we keep going. Invitation to familiarize. The second is called bodhicitta. We've gone over this a lot, again, in other in the podcast, as well as in the daily dharmas that, again, were more produced. So from a traditional point of view, you're going to see this translated as the altruistic mind of enlightenment. What the hell does that mean? Y'all already know I got beef with scholars. It's 2025. We got to clean all this up. And LFG, yes. Bodhicitta basically is the wish to become enlightened, or let's say from a traditional point of view, the way to understand it when you're reading traditional texts or translations, and it's translated directly from Sanskrit or from Tibetan, it will say the wish to become enlightened in order to benefit all beings, or it will say altruistic mind. Okay, so it's the highest thing from in the Buddhist world. This is maybe the highest thing that one can wish for or aspire to, right? It has the wish to become enlightened, but it's also qualified, it has the qualifier of in order to benefit all beings, right? I could wish to become enlightened for myself, or I could wish to become enlightened in order to bring maximum benefit to the world. Okay, so traditionally, this is what bodhicitta means. And then we're going to also see correct view of emptiness. So these are the three principal aspects. In other words, if there is no determination to be free of our spiritual homelessness, if there is no wish to become enlightened in order to benefit all beings, and if we do not have a clear view of what's going on, we do not have a spiritual practice. This is what Atisha is saying, who is one of the most revered heroes in the lineage. So please do not shoot the messenger. Please do not cancel me. Right? Atisha is proposing that he, the Yogi Baker, practiced all of these things. And if you would also like to become a liberated Yogi Baker, please also practice these things called become determined to end your spiritual homelessness. Become determined to find yourself at home everywhere. Become determined to find yourself at home everywhere. He's saying that there's that again, if you do not have that aspiration, there is no path. If you do not have the aspiration to become enlightened in order to benefit all beings, there's no path. If we don't have a clear view of what's going on, there's no path. Now, again, when you see correct view of emptiness or correct view or emptiness in a text, what they mean to say is dependent origination. You'll also see those words. You'll also see lack of inherent existence. All of that is the same idea. In other words, to us Westerners, it means interdependence. It means mutual influence. It means interrelationality. It means that whenever we see something, there is an insane magical network representing the causes of that thing. That thing does not exist on its own in a vacuum, and it never has and it never will. It has emerged through some crazy process. Okay, everything that we can see, everything that we can hear, everything that we can imagine, our sense of self, our consciousness, etc., etc. Okay. Okay, we're about halfway through. Now, again, invitation to familiarize and invitation to coffee breaks. Okay, thanks. We are going to the next guy here. This is a sneak peek, BTS behind the scenes look into me trying to make notes for myself so I don't forget something. So I'm just going to keep going. We're almost finished with the presentation. I was almost like, maybe we should pause and see if there's any discussion on those. But let me just go ahead and finish because I'm going to introduce kind of another idea here that is, is fairly provocative. Provocative. Okay. So trigger warning, provocation. And again, I say this a lot, provocation, invitation to familiarize ourselves with whether or not we would bet on provocation being an indicator of authenticity or not. Is provocation an indicator? Can it indicate that the lineage is alive somewhere, wherever that provocation is? Is provocation an indicator of authenticity? Why? Well, let's think about where the hell all this stuff comes from, right? It came from a guy who partied until he was 30, the greatest parties that you could imagine. Basically, imagine that Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg had a kid, had an only child. Imagine that Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg had an only child son, and they were grooming that son to take over the family business, but the business was also the president of the world. Okay? Can you imagine something as crazy as that? That's who Siddhartha was. Right? That's who Siddhartha was. Okay, so there's that. And then he said, you know what? I'm not interested in any of this. I'm just going to go become a wandering, go become a wandering beggar. And I'm also going to leave my wife, and I'm going to be an absent father to my newborn kid. Okay, I'm saying provocation from the jump, just built into the context of the whole thing. And then the actions associated with, can you believe that something is crazy? Not really, but that's crazy. And then he did that crazy thing, right? And then he did the crazy thing of going to the woods for 6 years and then coming back. I'm saying, imagine if again, magical hat, right? The Dharma as human imagination growth hormone. The Dharma as human imagination growth hormone. Magical hat. Let's play for a minute. Imagine that Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg had a son, and they groomed him to take over the family business, which was Meta and SpaceX and all those. And the family business was also the president of the world. And all they did, for one of the things that they did with their son, is they had Diddy parties like all day, every day. Okay, that guy. And then that guy was like, you know what? This is not that fulfilling or something. Okay. Being king of the world is not fulfilling. I'm going to go to the woods and become a wandering beggar. And then he does that. And then he comes back and says, I've had the answers to everything. Right? Like, imagine how we would view someone today like that. We'd be like, this person is clearly insane and definitely not worth listening to at all. Like, immediate cancel. Right? So I'm saying that to say that what there is no more provocative idea basically than that. Right? I mean, we could think of something, but that's like pretty preposterous, right? And so I'm saying it's built in. That a human being can even do that. Like the assertion that a human being can transition from, billionaire playboy to wandering beggar to realizer of all things. Right? So I'm saying the provocation is built in from the jump. The provocation meaning it's provoking to us. It's saying to us, yo, how magical is your view of what's actually going on? Like, what are you willing to entertain and not? Like, how flexible is your instinctual response to what's going on? Okay? So provocation from the jump. So now I'm going to do something a little bit provocative. I'm going to suggest that there's an idea that we should adopt as contemporary practitioners. Okay? I'm calling it Songs in the Key of Life. Again, this is my brain. This is BTS to my brain doing things prior to going online and talking crazy things. Okay. So Songs in the Key of Life is thinking, okay, Songs in the Key of Life, Stevie Wonder. The point I was trying to make is that there's, the teachings in the key of the turnings. In other words, there are primary and secondary pulses of Dharma energy. In other words, there are structural teachings and there are supplemental teachings. And this is also why in Vajra, in Tantra, there are root teachings and explanatory teachings. Right? There are certain components of the Dharma that I'm saying are structural. Like that is what's holding the whole thing up. And there are other teachings that I'm calling supplemental, or I'm calling primary pulses and secondary pulses. Okay. So obviously, Atisha may have been a Buddha, but Atisha did not turn the wheel for the first time, let's just say from a traditional point of view. There was a primary pulse, and Atisha, even if the pulse energy was the same in terms of the level of maturity that was achieved, Gautama, Atisha, even if they are the same in terms of the level that they activated, or the office, or their level in the corporation, they're both CEOs or something, right? One came before the other. So Atisha, in other words, is commenting on what his teachers offered him, or those teachers offered them. Those teachers were offered them, and them, and them, and them, and them, and them, and them. Right? Or in other words, look, 1,000 years passed between one and another. And the question is, how are they related? Right? So what I'm proposing for us to become familiar with as contemporary practitioners, I'm proposing that secondary or supplemental pulses or teachings must be filtered through primary structural pulses or teachings. The secondary should be filtered through the primary, right? This is what I'm proposing so that we can break through all the noise and we can start to identify how things fit together. Right. Yes, what I'm proposing is that the three principal aspects are a secondary pulse, and therefore that they should be filtered through the primary pulse. And what I'm also proposing is that if and when they are filtered through the primary pulse, they make even more sense. Like the whole picture makes even more sense, and we can connect the dots between, you can compress 1500 years, you can connect, 1000 AD to 500 BC or something. It's like, oh, I can see how that idea is still active and relevant, right? So I'm proposing that secondary pulses, like the three principal aspects, actually validate primary pulses like the first turning of the wheel or the second, and that they make even more sense when they are analyzed against or with the primary pulses, the root or the structural teachings, as I'm calling them. Okay, I'm proposing that for a teaching to be valid, it must correspond to the logic of the Dharma structure. Okay, right? Okay, and so here we go. So the question, therefore, is, how does the teaching on the three principal aspects actually correspond to the stages of the path, or to the three turnings of the wheel? Where does this fit, and how does it work? Or is it different, right? If it were something different, then how is any of this stuff related? Okay, so I'm going to now propose a reordering of the three principal aspects from a contemporary point of view, and also some renaming. So I'm proposing that we get rid of the word renunciation, because it implies that, and has been a catalyst for renouncing the world, which, again, from a magical hat, good news, how to solve the game point of view, if it's true that the way forward is to become intimate with the world, then how could renouncing the world actually deliver that experience to me? Now, I agree that there are things to be renounced, but I think that the word is confusing. So I'm proposing that, from a contemporary point of view, we can call the first principal aspect participation, and I'm defining that as participation is to live a life that is fully dedicated to and undistracted from progressing along the path. And kind of commenting or expanding this idea, what we really mean to say is, participation. We make the determination to free ourselves from our spiritual homelessness, as I was saying when I was going through the traditional slide. Participation is the determination to free ourselves from our spiritual homelessness. In other words, our basic insanity. In other words, I have no idea who I really am, why I'm here, where I've come from, or where I'm going. Participation is the determination to free ourselves from our spiritual homelessness, and to view everyone and everything as inherently full of magical potential. That is what is a first thing that is participatory about it. And everyone and everything as an integral part of ourselves. Again, that is something that is participatory about it. And to view everyone, everything, others as valuable to the point of sanctity, and therefore becoming objects that we wish to steward, serve, inspire, pacify, support, educate, and so on. That's why I'm using the word participation, because it corresponds directly to our spiritual homelessness. When we are spiritually homeless, we do not want to participate. When we're spiritually homeless, when we have the feeling like, I don't want to go do that, that is spiritual homelessness. When we have the feeling that person's an idiot, that is spiritual homelessness. That's why I'm saying participation. Play. Let's play. Imagine how your life would be if every time you woke up, you're like, I'm ready to play. What are we doing today? I'm here to play. So you can see the difference, right? And you've also met people that are like that. So what it is that we're renouncing is our old habit of viewing things as not magical and not worth participating with. Again, if we do not have this, we do not have a spiritual practice. Please don't shoot me, the messenger. I'm just conveying a message. I'm relaying a message. Okay, and now the thing that now how is this associated with the broader question of how do we filter this through the structural teachings? This corresponds to a noble being's realization of the first tenet. In other words, the path starts right here. In other words, this maps and graphs into the first noble truth. Okay, in other words, participation, renouncing our old habit of viewing things as not worth supporting, etc., that maps onto the very first noble truth, or the truth that noble beings realize, that is, confusion is around. Notice that there are times, probably a lot of them, where you say, I really don't want to do that. And it's emerging out of an evaluation of yourself as, I'm not that thing. That is not a part of my friend group. That is not a part of my career. That is not a part of who I am. That's not my responsibility. Notice how often you do that. And I'm throwing the gauntlet. I'm saying, I'm not trying to say that it's wrong to do that. I'm inviting us to become familiar with the fact that we do that. And that we could, if we wanted to, we could analyze and see how related we are to whatever is going on. Actually, it's another human being. It's an opportunity to learn something. It's an opportunity to make money, etc. Right? Anyway, so we're running out of time, so I'm going to keep going here. So we're participating in our lives and with other people. We're renouncing our old habit of viewing things as not magical. That graphs right into the first noble truth. Okay. Now I'm flipping the order here. I'm going to call correct view or emptiness, I'm going to call it shared identity. Okay. Instead of correct view. And I'm switching them for a reason that I'm going to touch. So shared identity naturally emerges from the recognition that any environment or object is included within and composed of other objects and environments. Right. In other words, when we analyze anything, period, we will notice that it was produced by other things, which were produced by other things, which were produced by other things, which were produced by other things, and so on and so on. You know, you're following the chain into the past, into beginninglessness, and then that thing will inevitably change shape and go into another thing, and another thing, and another thing, and another thing into endlessness. Right? As a crazy idea. Okay. In other words, what it's saying, hold on. I think I did something. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. In other words, it's like this, right? I live in a community, which lives in a larger community, which lives in a larger community, larger community, larger community, larger community, larger community. If you take any one of those concentric circles away, there is no my life, right? Let's just get something as simple as my body came from other people's bodies, which came from other people's bodies, which came from other people's bodies, which came from other people's bodies. If you interrupt any one of those connections, there is no my body. And therefore, it only makes sense for my sense of self to include, expand, extend into some beginningless place and forward into some endless place. I'm saying we can literally analyze anything, period. A thought, a word, a language, an idea, me, sense of myself, right? Etc., etc. And therefore, if it is true that things are that connected to each other and that dependent upon one another, doesn't it make sense to call them somehow at least related? Right? And so another way to understand shared identity is like that's a last name, in other words. It's a family name. We share the family name. You know what I'm saying? And the only reason that that is not like, yeah, it's because we actually don't like our families. I don't want to be a part of my family. Spiritual homelessness. My mom's an idiot. Spiritual homelessness. My brother's a crazy person. Spiritual homelessness. So when we're introduced to the fact that there's nowhere else to go except everywhere, and there's no one else to be except everyone, we actually, I don't want that to be true because I don't like my family. I don't like existing. I've actually I have now intellectually discovered who I am, intellectually, where I am, all over the place. But I don't want that to be the case. Because I'm so familiar, because thus far, my experience of existing has sucked so much that I don't really want to be here. Get me out of here, no escape. Magical bad news. Okay, and so then now, okay, so let's just break this down. Sorry, I got a little ranty. Okay, so shared identity, in other words, traditionally correct view, the existence of anything only arises from and is dependent upon other objects and environments, and the health of one influences the health of others. Right. I match vibes. If I go around saying I match vibes, so you determine how we're going to act, I'm handing over my sovereignty. And because I match vibes, in other words, because we're connected, your vibe is going to influence my vibe. Obviously, we don't want to hold bad vibes inside of who wants to feel that? You don't want to feel that. Right? We all match each other's vibes. Who's going to step up and be the captain of the relationship? Who's going to step up and be the captain of the relationship and initiate great vibes? Anyway, this corresponds to a noble being's realization of the second and third tenets. In other words, the concept, the cause of our basic insanity is that we do not realize we're sharing a family name, a family. The cause for our basic insanity is we don't realize that we're home. That's the cause of it. We think we're at war with barbarian lunatics when in fact everything that we can perceive is just as much a part of ourselves as our hand. Now it's a little bit obviously more complicated than that, right? But when we recognize that we are integrally bound to other things, I'm saying, notice that you don't even have the experience of that with your kid or your wife or another person. Right? So again, provocation, what are we even talking about? Well, maybe it's empathy. No, it's like what they're literally talking about is the compassion, the connection you feel for your hand when it's hot, when you touch something hot. Right? Notice that you are invested in your hand's well-being to the degree that when your hand does something that threatens its health, everything stops and you fix it. Right? But also, you're not threatened by your hand. At the same time, when we acknowledge a visceral connection to something else and we recognize it as an integral part of ourselves, there's two things that happen at the same time. We're at peace with it and we accept responsibility for it. The mechanics of identity, where we are identified, we find ourselves at peace at home and we take responsibility for the thing. Okay, so this corresponds to the cause of basic insanity, as well as what is proposed by the cessation of the basic insanity in the third noble truth. And finally, folks. So I'm proposing that instead of bodhicitta, let's use our own word, stewardship is the natural emotional response to successful aspirational mentation. Now, I'm using words that someone would, if you're watching this, would have had to have worked with the Dharma Compass. In other words, the more that we familiarize ourselves with how deeply we need other people, how deeply we're connected to other people, naturally our heart starts to open. Right? In the Down to Earth Dharma series, I'm saying first we open our mind. The byproduct of opening our mind is that we open our hearts. When I open my mind and see, intellectually grasp how deeply I'm connected to other people, as I start to do that, as I familiarize myself intellectually with my dependence on others and my connection to others and my influence and my being influenced by, as I familiarize myself with that more and more and more, naturally I start to feel invested in their well-being. And so naturally, stewardship is, in other words, you can't fake the funk of stewardship. In other words, you cannot fake the funk of stewardship. So to me, that's why it's like that, Atisha would say stewardship second, but that's only because he's 1,500 years of a culture that's talking stewardship. It's built into them, for them. For us, the contemporary, it's not built in. So we need to understand how, like, why stewardship or why bodhicitta is something that is a principal aspect, because it emerges. It is the natural, again, it's the natural emotional response to intellectually grasping what's going on. In other words, okay. And now the final slide, folks, and I think I've just said all of that. Okay, so it is the profound commitment to assist others, stewardship, which is the byproduct of contemplating shared identity. Stewardship is the profound commitment to assist others in maximizing their evolutionary potential, and subsequently, the realization that in order to do so, we must maximize our own. How the hell am I gonna convince Gen Z to show up at work and work hard or whatever, right? Well, whose fault is that? It's not Gen Z's fault, bro. Like owner, manager, GM, who's complaining about your staff. It's not your staff's fault. You got to step your game up. You're not popping. No one wants to listen to you. They're smarter than you. They're over the tyrant authority thing. GM, that's complaining about your staff. Owner, that's complaining about your staff. That's your fault for not being inspiring, uplifting, ennobling. In other words, in order, if we're going to have any shot of assisting other people, we got to become dope AF. We have to become heroic so that they come to us and ask us, how are you dunking so hard on your life? Invitation to familiarize ourselves. Is there a relationship between how poppin' my life is and whether or not I can earn other people's trust and respect? Or am I just expecting that they trust me just because my thing says general manager on it, or owner, or whatever? Obviously, no, of course not. Anyway, with love, folks, with love. With love. So this becomes then a path of prayer, and it corresponds to the fourth tenet. In other words, it becomes a practice, or that the fourth noble truth, basically, to just encapsulate, just sum all of it up, and basically, there's a path of prayer. There's a path of trying to become more invested in other people's well-being in the form of, first, let me make sure that I am being as radiant, graceful, formidable, etc., as possible, so that I can earn other people's ears organically, right? So this is the practice that noble beings willingly adopt in order to bring maximum benefit to themselves, others, and the shared environment. And I'm just looking that we have 22 slides on Sunday, folks. Well, technically we only have 1 minute left. I'm sorry for that. We can hang for a few if there's any comments. If anyone has questions, you want me to go back through something, the floor is yours. Take it away, folks. Or if we're digesting, I'll set a timer here. if we're digesting. We'll do a little 30-second timer, at which point we can say goodbye until next time. And also invitation to familiarize ourselves with coffee breaks. All right, folks. See you next week at 12 p.m. Eastern time. Men's group, 7 o'clock. Tuesday, 7 o'clock. We can maybe get into prayer a little bit next time. There's a request for that, but I think it would take us somewhere into time consumption land, which is a good place to go, especially when we're talking about prayer. Sundays, 12 p.m. Eastern here. Thank you for being patient with us as we're figuring this out. Sending you all the very best possible LFG. Thank you.